Welcome again to our webinar tonight, Unlocking the World of American Boarding Schools. So first of all, let me introduce Sesameed. Sesameed is an education consultancy. We specialize in helping families plan the education path for their child, multi-year planning, education planning. So when I saw that there were some year 5, year 6, that's as young as when we start around 9 years old, 10 years old, we started having discussions with parents talking about the education journey of their child ahead for the entire secondary school all the way into university. That's what we do. We're education planners. And in that journey, we specialize in 2 particular milestones. One is the high school, which we call boarding school, especially we focus on boarding. And the next one, of course, would be university. So on here, you can see that we have a very special, unique boarding school prep program, as well as a university prep program. Tonight, we focus on boarding schools and specifically American boarding schools. A little bit about myself. My name is Daniel Szeto. I am the founder and head of Sesameed Education. I was born in Hong Kong. I grew up in Hong Kong. I spent the majority of my life in Hong Kong, so I'm a Hong Konger. But now I am in Singapore. That's where I am right now. I travel around frequently within Southeast Asia, frequently to Bangkok, and nowadays also to Dubai as well, to spread the good news of boarding education. I am a boarding school alum. I studied in America, my secondary school, especially in the boarding school setting, the web schools. That's where I came from. And after that, I went to pursue engineering, like many Asian students do, right? I pursue engineering, math at Cornell University in upstate New York, one of the Ivies, they call it. And I was fortunate enough to get in there many years ago when the competition was much less intense. I am also a boarding school parent. I sent my first 3 children to boarding schools. So my oldest daughter went to UK for boarding school for year 7. And then after year 11, after GCSE, I switched her out of the UK boarding system into the American system. But not within America, but located in the Middle East, in Jordan, at a school called King's Academy, because my daughter really loves international relations. So I thought, Middle East is where all the interesting international politics are happening. So I threw her in over there, 3 wonderful years at the King's Academy. And my son went to UK boarding school at the age of 9, so for year 5. So my son went to study in the UK boarding school at year 5 at Ludgrove. I believe that was also the same school that Princess Diana back then sent her 2 sons to as well. For my son went on from Ludgrove to Winchester and then finished his secondary schooling at Winchester, and now studying at UCL, pursuing economics. My third daughter studying at Benetton, an all-girls school also in the UK. She started at year 7, and now she is doing her year 11 right now. She's in her GCSE year. So I feel with you, parents, when some of you are in GCSE time, year 10, year 11, I am with you at this. Tonight, the topics that we'll be going through would be about boarding education, first and foremost, not international day school, but boarding schools, but especially American boarding. So we have a number of topics, as you guys can see on the agenda. So I'll be speaking rather quickly, all right? And no worries, time will be open to having to schedule a follow-up meeting to understand the exact situation about your family, about your child, and we can discuss in a little bit more tailored way to your family's situation. So the first topic to many parents would be, why boarding? I mean, my international is pretty good, really good, right? Day schools are fine, right? Why boarding? Well, I would like to say that the magic of boarding education lies in the very one simple concept, is boarding. So what is the big deal about boarding? Boarding really means it's not like, oh, you live in a hotel, that's boarding, or you live in a dorm, that's boarding. What it really means is you live outside of your comfort zone. Your child having the chance to enter into the unknown, the outside world, outside of one's comfort zone. See, as a child grows up, from a baby to a toddler to a young child, now to a teenager, all right, it's all under the protection and the security of daddy and mommy, of the parents, right? It's under the security of the home, right? Under one roof, together as a family. So that is the safety net. That is the comfort zone. So when we talk about boarding, it's actually we are getting the child ready, to leave one's default comfort zone to be getting ready step by step towards getting into the real world. So we start off with the comfort zone, our own home, and we know that at 20 odd years old, they will graduate from university and they will enter into the real world. All right. So overall, that's a transition period. And boarding schools are about enabling that transition period and making it, putting it on steroids so that students can grow in a much faster way. So what is boarding? I just mentioned boarding is not a day school plus a cafeteria plus a dorm and a bunch of land and facilities, although that is actually true. It has all the classrooms, all the labs you need. It has a dining hall. It has all the dormitories to house a student at night, and it has all the land. With all the land, you got all the tennis court, all the golf courses. You got the swimming pools. You name it, man. All the state-of-the-art facilities you will find at the boarding schools. Even though that is true, but that is not really what boarding is all about. Boarding is really about, as I said before, you leave your family, you leave your parents, you leave your siblings, but in return, gain some, you lose some, you gain some, right? What do you gain? You gain friendship, you gain peers, and you gain teachers and coaches. And you get what we got 24/7 interaction because you live there 7 days, 24 hours. So you live and breathe with your peers and with your teachers and with your coaches. It's a whole new environment. It's an exciting new world. It's a really good thing. Who chooses boarding? So first of all, I want to talk about a myth. Boarding schools are for the naughty and the undisciplined. All right. And that, got to send them to boarding schools, shaping them up. It's like a prison kind of a concept, right? But the reality is cannot be farther away from that myth. Right? The reality is the boarding schools are really for those disciplined young adults, who can manage their studies on their own, right? If you cannot handle your own affairs, don't bother to go to boarding school. Boarding schools are for those young adults who are already good enough to handle their own affairs, all right? They don't need daddy, mommy to remind them to do homework or to, hey, not play a video game and do some study. They don't need that. They get it already. They can manage their own affairs. Who are intellectually curious to experience all that life has to offer. It's not just study, right? They get curious to learn, different sports. They got curious about learning music, right? And engaging into doing drama, right? Singing, be some dancing, right? They would do some digital design, take some digital photographs and do some video editing, put it on their own website, right? You name it, right? They get into different interests, into clubs, and also participating in their own school, taking on house captains, right? Different class representative, student union, student council. They get involved, right? This is the type of boarding school students, type of students that go into boarding schools. They will have the courage to go out of the comfort zone to try new things, right? They're always on the lookout for new things, and they're excited about it. They want to have access to those new things. And they have the resilience to keep going even under setbacks and failures. Not everything that we try, we will succeed, all right? I mean, it doesn't happen. The world doesn't work that way, right? We try new things. Some of them we're good at. Some of them, after we try a little bit, we realize that, we're not that great at this. It's okay. We try it, right? And we still can keep going. And boarding schools are for those who are ready and eager to face the world, to go out and face the world. This is the type of student body who would choose boarding. So what makes boarding schools superior? All right. In a nutshell, you get the top-notch faculty, the most advanced curriculum, because they, especially American boarding, they don't teach the typical courses. They teach the most advanced courses, all right? And they have all the money to hire the best teachers. So unlike international schools out here in Asia, I'm not talking about Dubai per se, but out here in Asia, I've been around to many different cities. Hong Kong, Singapore, is the same situation happens, revolving doors. International schools, they do have foreign teachers, international teachers, but they come and go, right? It's a revolving door. And so for the boarding schools out there, they do get to keep the best of the teachers. Their facilities are renowned because they have all the land and they have all the resources, they have all the wealth. When we send our child to boarding schools, they are being supervised by a host of adults. We usually call a 5-point contact. They have the regular classroom teachers, the academic teachers. They have the sports coaches. They have the dorm parents, like you live in the dorm, so you have adults governing the dorms, right? And you have advisors. Every student is paired to an advisor. An advisor usually governs on average about 6 students under his or her care. And then we have the university counselors who guide the students on to the next destination. So every boarding school student is under a 5-point adult contact. Most importantly, in my humble opinion, boarding schools are known to select the cream of the crops. So boarding schools are coming. I will later on talk about it, right? When they come to a region, they are not looking for ordinary students. They are looking for promising students. I'm not going to say the top students, because the top students have an inclination to say that they need to be doing really well right now. All right. And it doesn't have to be that way. That's not Americans look for. Americans look for people with potential. They might already be doing very well. Great. But they might not be doing as well, but they demonstrate a lot of potential. So it's what they call promising students. That's what they look for. It's like buying stocks, right? Buying stocks with a lot of growth potential. That's what they're looking for. And so boarding schools are filled with exceptionally bright and driven peers. Not just bright, not just hardworking, driven. Driven meaning that they come with a sense of purpose. They are motivated towards certain outcome, certain achievement in life, certain direction in life. And what we call iron sharpens iron. Boarding schools are not just about teaching knowledge to our students. I mean, you can buy a book, right? You can read and you can gain knowledge, right? You don't even need to go to school nowadays, right? But boarding schools are a lot more about character development. Yes, they cover all the academics already, no problem. But that's a given. That's just a start, right? They do a lot more than just giving our child the academic development, all right? They give our child character development and leadership training, especially on the American front. And as a result, most of the boarding schools have very, very top matriculation to the top 30 American universities. If we look at global rankings, we also know that many of the Fortune 500 are American firms, and many of the most notable research universities are American. And so more and more, the trend, as I will share on a later slide, is that more and more of the families are attracted to send their children to study in American universities. So American boarding schools is the most direct path to the high-end top American universities. So why American boarding? Per se, American boarding, but why American boarding? One, as I mentioned, is the increasing popularity of top American universities. Second, increasing popularity of liberal arts education. So nowadays, many parents increasingly do not like the British system whereby students are kind of confined to study one major or at least a predefined, they call it course. And for 3 years straight, you can't change. It's not very easy to change. They want more and more parents understand that what their children should really be getting at an undergraduate education level is really a broader based fundamental training and skill sets, upon which they can then enter into the working world and be able to deal with different types of job natures. So it's long gone are the old days when, okay, you are trained to be a doctor, you are trained to be a lawyer. Yes, we still have those. You are trained to be a carpenter, you are trained to be a shoesmith, right? It's like, right, so it's very defined. But nowadays, our world doesn't operate that way. And increasingly so, it does not operate that way. And so more and more parents, they see the advantage of giving their child a much broader base of education foundation. And so liberal arts education comes in play, and that's very much on the American turf, liberal arts education, in terms of giving students a broad base in terms of humanities, as well as on the STEM side. Increasing popularity of inquiry-based learning approach. In the minds of the Americans, education is not just about giving them knowledge and knowledge. Nowadays with Google, right, we can have a lot of knowledge already, right? What really inspires American education is really the journey to acquire knowledge. Is the process of how you get into knowledge and to discover knowledge and to generate intelligence. That is the difficult part. That's the art. So American, yes, we will give our next generation knowledge, but more importantly, we will teach them how to discover knowledge, how to develop knowledge in the first place. And this type of inquiry-based learning is very American. Later on, I'll talk about it. They have a special name for it called partners. Increasing relevance of the ability to collaborate and lead. Again, this is a very American concept. The British considers, giving them knowledge, preparing them for that profession is the name of the game. That is the job of the school. Americans don't think that way. American thinks that we got to prepare the future leaders in the world. That is our job. And so leadership has a big theme in the overall American schooling, especially boarding. So start off with, we look into curriculum. So American curriculum, first of all, is ability-based. There's no confinement to a national curriculum. So all year 9 students will study this, all year 10 students will study that, and year 11 students, you were doing this and do a GCSE exam nationwide or internationally. Americans don't believe in that. Americans believe all children are brought up differently. They are bestowed with different gifts, and they are also bestowed with different developmental calendar. Some would develop faster, some would develop they need a little more time, and it's okay. They can still succeed in life. And so therefore, Americans, they do not believe in a very rigid national curriculum whereby student of a particular age, you have to study this, and a particular age, you have to study that. And so it's all ability-based. Inquiry-based, as I mentioned, is a Socratic approach whereby students are not just there in a classroom to take down notes, whatever that the teacher write on the board or say, you just memorize it. That is not the way to learn. What it is students would do the homework before the class. And when they come to the class, they voice out their opinion. So it's what they call Socratic approach. In all top boarding schools, you'll see these oval-shaped, they call it hardness tables. It's like basically Socratic discussion tables. So it's like an oval shape, sit around 12 to 15 students in a classroom, and then they go prepared, they go to each class prepared, and they share what they learned, their viewpoint upon the reading that they did the night before. So it's they do the homework before the class. And then in the class, they discuss, they share, and everybody learns from each other's viewpoint. So they learn not just from teacher, they learn from each other. So every peer is like a teacher in a sense. And they learn to respect each other's viewpoint as well as to give constructive criticism and to raise questions on their viewpoints as well. So this type of Socratic discussion is at the very heart of all humanities trainings in part of American boarding education. Process-centered, not entirely test-driven. So American education, they do have tests, but just like the Brits, you have IGCSE, you have A-level, you have IB, right? You have we have tests, right? American tests too, but the tests of the final exams form maybe a quarter to a third of the entire year grades. The other ones are daily homework, weekly and tests, papers, as well as class participation. So all this is part of the overall grade. So that's why Americans are more what called process-centered and not just test-driven. If we look at the overall landscape of the major curriculum in the world, we have IB, right, which goes along with many of the international schools around the world, not just in Asia. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the A level, developed by the British schools, and America is kind of in the middle. So let's start off with the Brits, because they really are the forerunner. And the Brits started off with the A level, whereby and GCSE. So at a younger age, students study many subjects. Like for GCSE, students study anywhere from 10 to 12, even more subjects, right? A lot of subjects at year 11. And then after year 11, right, you narrow. So for the last 2 years, if people were to pursue A level, you would take about 4, right? Some maybe like take 5, but really challenging, right? But most take 4 type of subjects, narrow it down to your interest. And then when you go on to university, from 4 to 1, right? So it's like a pyramid type of a nature. IB was created after the Second World War, when there was more mobility from country to country, and it had to deal with the constant movement of businessmen, diplomats, and all that. Basically, that was the need of the international schools at the time: business people, diplomats, and they need to create a system which is modular in structure, which is like Lego. You can fit into very easily from place to place. So I can study year 9 in Hong Kong, year 10 in Singapore, year 11 in Dubai, and year 12, who knows where, right? So that is the name of the game for the design behind IB. And that has to be modular, like cookie cutter. And between the UK highly flexible, which you can choose any A-level subjects you want, to IB, where you have to choose 6, right? Not more, not less. Usually it's going to be 3 higher level, 3 standard level. Well, it's going to be at least 1 in the language, right? 1 in math, 1 in science, 1 in social science, 1 in foreign language, and 1 in arts, right? Of course, there's a little bit of wiggle room, but more or less it's highly structured. But the Brits are highly flexible. You can do all humanities and no science. You can avoid taking any math. Or you can, the other way around, you can take all math, right? Math, physics, chemistry, biology, and you take no English at all. All right, it's highly flexible. And the American system is kind of in the middle, in that right balance. Because many parents ask me, so how is the American system different from my current system, either IB or GCSE? They are in the right in the middle. And for the Americans, they are not confined by a national curriculum. So every school has its own courses. And those courses are being designed by its own faculty. And their faculty are, master's degree, PhD degree in that particular field. And so if you look at the academic catalog, course catalog for the top American boarding schools, you will see it's like a buffet. It's like all these wonderful courses. If you put them together, it's like don't overlap. Because every teacher has their own specialty, has their own little niche and their own little passion and research area that they will be teaching their students. And so, therefore, for the American point of view, it's not about what you study as much as how you study and how you learn. That is the crux of American learning. Why American boarding from an activities view? Americans believe in group-based activities. So they are not as excited about piano, say, for example. They're a lot more excited about saxophone, about drums, about guitar, because these are things that you play in an orchestra or school band, group-based activities, all right? They are very much into activities that are directed by the student. It's not like managed by the teacher, all right? Because the whole name of the game is not about instilling knowledge and skills to the student body. Americans believe you can learn it elsewhere, right? But at school, it's really about training the student to have that motivation, to have that initiative to direct their own activities. So encourage their students to start off different clubs, to start off different ideas behind the community service projects, to whatever idea that they come up with, right? Of course, it has to be sensible. So you need to get a teacher to kind of sponsor it, meaning to vet it, making sure it's sensible. They can do it. And the American system encourages their students to come up with those ideas and to go after implementing them. It's impact driven. So they always talk about, what type of impact do you generate for your community, for your surrounding, for example. Now, when American boarding schools look at the activities, they are looking into 8 main categories: sports, music, performing arts, visual arts, clubs, leadership positions, community service, and personal hobbies and interests. This is what they consider as a very well-rounded base for skills. Leadership, that's a very American thing. Getting to know people, getting yourself known, being engaged and working with one another, being liked and becoming popular, driving projects and leading teams, learning to stand up to make an impact. These are all the type of focus behind the American education towards grooming, developing leadership in our next generation. And part of what makes American education special is the university assessment. They are arguably the most labor-intensive process in the university world anywhere in the world. It's the most labor-intensive. It is also, it takes a lot of the most amount of time to process application and to come up with an admission decision. Americans go with a 360-degree kind of assessment angle. They look at not just your academic grades, yes, they do that, but they look at your academic interest in terms of breadth and also depth. So they look at, if you're interested in certain things, do you do research? Americans are very into that. They're not just into, okay, how well you score on that IB exam. Right? Yeah, that's important. That's good to know. Right? It's good to know that you score 44, right, on your IB. Good for you. But what are your interests, and what have you demonstrated towards going deep into your passion? That's what American universities would be looking for. Not just academics breadth and depth, but also interest breadth and depth. It could be in sports, it could be in music, it could be in performing arts, whatever. Anyone can have your interests and passions. Have you gone deep, right? How broad is your interest base? And for those that you really love, how deep did you go? That's what they're asking for. That's what they are trying to find out. Collaboration and leadership strength, right? At least they're looking for students who can collaborate with one another, because that's what Americans believe that the world needs. The world does, the corporate world needs people who can work with one another. All right, but it better, if we can actually lead a team of people, that's even better. All right, so they're also looking at not just collaboration, but leadership potential. And of course, all that is accumulates into personal maturity and drive, a sense of purpose. So I kind of already give hints as to what American boarding schools value, right? Americans value diversity. They value unique voices being given by students of all sorts of backgrounds. So in their classroom, they don't like to have just one type of students. They want to have students from all sorts of socio-economical, cultural backgrounds. So let's say, for example, American boarding schools right now don't have a lot of representatives from UAE, right? So that sounds a very welcoming signal. And that is also being proven by the American boarding schools' interest in the upcoming Dubai Fair. More than 30 schools have signed up for Dubai. And it is a clear sign that they are very interested in this market. And they would like to have more voices from UAE, from the Middle East. well-roundedness. They're looking for students with a breadth of interest, not just study, right? Because they believe, Americans believe, that the dots eventually will connecting the dots. Maybe we don't exactly know what is the big deal about sports right now, but down the road, it might connect. Team player. I've mentioned enough about leadership potential. American boarding schools very much look for students who can collaborate with others, and better yet, who can lead. Character. Values are very important to Americans, to the American boarding schools. Yes, they're interested in you getting A's and all that, but they are also equally interested in you, as in how resilient you are, how kind you are, right? And all these are virtues that cannot be displayed easily on a standard report card, all right? But when they make their admission offer, all this come into play. They're looking for a community member. They're looking for a good citizen. Ultimately, American boarding schools treasure contribution. They want each of the incoming members to contribute to the community and ultimately to learn to generate an impact to the world around them. That, in short, encapsulate what type of profile of a student American boarding schools look for. So none of this says they need A+ all the time. And that's why what American boarding schools and British boarding schools look for are very different type of students. I mean, students can do really well in British boarding schools admission, but might not be doing great on the American counterpart, or vice versa. So therefore, I would welcome conversations with more of the parents here. And if you are interested to consider boarding education, but are not entirely sure what country to send your child to, let me know. I'll be very interested and delighted to learn about your child's situation and offer you a little bit of advice from my years of experience. I've been in the field for more than 20 years. I'm close to kind of retirement now and taking it easy. But I'll be delighted. I love meeting people. So just schedule an appointment with Pooja, and we can hop on this type of Zoom. Zoom is great nowadays. There's a great invention of humankind, and we can just talk, and I'll be able to give you some advice within an hour, getting to know your child a little bit more. Factors to consider, right? The first thing when parents consider boarding schools is safety. Is it safe? Especially for America. Is it safe? All right. I have to say that yes, America's there are guns. I'm not going to hide about that. But the boarding schools in America is really big, and the boarding schools there are all located in very remote and suburban countryside area where like there's nothing around, just maybe cows and sheep, that sort of thing. So in terms of safety, that has never been an issue. Okay. Now, however, there are some issues with drugs, alcohol, and sex. Alcohol being the most most frequent type of a problem, because it is less less severe in nature. Just a can of beer would get yourself kicked out, would get yourself expelled from a boarding school. Americans are really strict on these type of drugs, alcohol, and sex issues. So as teenagers, they are tempted to try different things. All right, we're not going to hide about it. But once the school discover, there are very, very serious consequences. You just get kicked out. It is not unheard of that usually by the time fall break, because the school would begin around beginning of September, right? And then the first fall break is around middle of October, so it's about 6 weeks. It is not unheard of that by the time a school hits its fall break, about 10 or more students would be expelled by then, because they try to break rules or they have already broken rules. Out you go. So the schools send a very, very strong message. And therefore, teenagers adapt, they understand there are consequences and they learn to respect rules and regulations. Liberalism, especially, more in more recent years, there's this gender issue, gender debate that has been going on. LGBTQ, that has been a point of contention, I would say, among the parents' world. I've heard many parents, sharing with me that they are not entirely very comfortable with the way things are happening in the US with all these type of gender issues that are being discussed over there. Yes, it is being discussed, but on the other hand, it is being discussed on a very academic and intellectual way as well. Now, there's no peer pressure in one form or shape anywhere, and many boarding schools are themselves very conservative in nature, right? They would not ban certain discussions, but doesn't mean that they endorse it either. So therefore, I would say overall, it is still a fairly healthy type of environment for all types of discussions. Now, when we talk about whether or not to send our child abroad, we have to first and foremost look into two big picture factors, what I call big picture factors. One is country, all right? In terms of boarding schools, the largest ones are US and UK, all right? Canada and Switzerland are kind of in between. And I use that sequence on the screen here. US, Canada, Switzerland, UK is kind of that spectrum, that continuum. US is on one end, UK is on another, and then Switzerland is closer to UK, but it's a little bit more towards the US side, and Canada is also a little bit, to the UK from the US side. So that's a spectrum. Timing, also in terms of how early do we want to send our child. Most families, I would say 9 out of 10, will be sending our child to senior boarding schools, age 14 and up. But there are those families who want to get a leg up, get a head start, and to start off at junior boarding. Some of those could be language. Maybe your language is not as strong, so you can beef up your language. And some others could be interest. Right now you are very good in your academics, but you are quite lacking, not as well, not as strong, not having as firm a base in your activities and interests. So you might want to go to America boarding schools to have a year or two of a preparation before you apply to the top senior boarding schools. Those parents who usually their child to go to junior boarding schools, almost all of them have one goal: to enter into a top senior boarding school. And why do they want to enter into a top senior boarding school? Because they want to enter into top university. So it's just how the game goes. And so there are those reasons and rationale that parents should consider way in advance. So I noticed some parents are year 5, year 6. That's the right time. That's the right time to consider. Execution factors. So this is not the big picture factors, but more about looking for the best fits. So when you look at schools, I'm not going to go in depth here, but just at a high level, there are a lot of factors that you need to be considered with, such as the student size, right? How big is the school? That to me is the single biggest factor, most important factor to consider for our child, because a big school and a small school operate very differently, very, very differently, at least among the top American boarding schools world. There are some schools that are more than 1,000 students strong, and there are some schools that are 200-something student boarding. And they're equally academically rigorous, equally high ranking, but the culture is very different. All right. Big schools are a lot more, you get a lot more diversity, you get a lot more exposure, but it is also a little bit more, formal, right? A little more rigid. Whereas the small schools are a lot more warm, a lot more nurturing, a lot more supportive. Boarding ratio, 100% boarding. Schools with 100% boarding would be a lot more onto character development, not just academics, but there's a very strong character development component to it, right? The other end of the spectrum is 0% boarding, which is a day school, which tends to be a lot more on the intellectual development side only. Location, not just about East Coast, West Coast, also about North and South, right? In terms of climate, do you have, or are you into, let's say you want to play soccer all year long? Well, then you're not going to study at Boston, right? Because they are going to have snow during the winter, which will prevent you to play your soccer, during that time. So you might want to study in a school closer to the south, like Texas, say, for example. Also, schools between city versus suburban, it will be a different type of a feel. There's a school, Episcopal High School, which is only less than half an hour away in the outskirts of Washington, D.C. That school is as urban as you get. It's a boarding school, 100% boarding. It's right next to Washington, D.C. And a lot of the classes actually take place at Washington, D.C. The teacher would drive a van of the 10, 14, 18 students, go out to D.C. and conduct a class at a museum, at whatever place or lab over there within DC. So so American boarding schools are all very different types and different kinds. And then there are also those which are mixed gender, co-educational versus single gender, boys school, girls schools. All right, so that would also give a different type of an education environment for our students. And then there are the signature programs. Again, one of the things that drive American schools different from the British counterpart, especially, is that they are not confined by a national curriculum. They can teach whatever they want to teach, right? I have a school, at least one. I have two schools in America that would teach its students how to drive an airplane. Yes, within your high school years, you can get a pilot license. All right, and one school would be teaching that alongside of this engineering curriculum. All right, so you're learning engineering and learning how to fly an airplane at the same time. All right, you can't have that in England because this is not one of the predefined curriculum or courses that are being made available on GCSE or A level. Right, Americans is all individualistic. Any school can create any program as long as it's educational, right? So there are robotics program, and there are different types of performing arts program, you name it, different types of signature programs that are available for students. Going for pre-law, medicine, engineering, science research, yeah, you name it. Last but not least, I want to be a little catch up more with time as we're closing to wrap up. We'll be talking about the timing, and I mentioned about the age, right? 14 years old, that sort of thing would be beginning of grade 9. That's usually when you start heading into senior boarding school. So I would say usually parents would be going for 8 rising 9. So you're after grade 8, then you're going to grade 9. So for those parents with children right now in grade 8, right, or age 13 plus, that would be or year 9, grade 8. All right, the British way is called year 9, the American way is called grade 8. Around 13 plus, that is the proper time to now deciding whether or not you want to go boarding next year, for example. And so 8 rising 9 is a very popular entry point. On the screen here, you see that there are those grades which has 1 take and 3 takes. The 3 takes are the major entry point. The 1 takes are sporadic, right? So you have a lot more spaces at grade 9 than at grade 10. So in terms of planning for boarding education, especially you're planning for top boarding schools, you want to get into the top boarding school, right? So you want to heighten your chance, increase your chance of getting in. Then you likely you want to apply to a grade where they have the most number of spaces available. So which is grade 9 for the majority of the senior boarding schools. And then for junior boarding schools, it will be grade 7. Grade 7 would be 12 plus, age 12 plus. So when you apply, you'll be in grade 6, which is 11 plus. So all this is, an overview. I noticed there are also some families here with children in, let's say, year 10, year 11. Yeah, we can still talk. We can still talk. In America, it's very flexible in a sense. They allow students to do a repeat year. All right. Now, repeat year in most Asian contexts is a taboo. We don't talk about repeat. You repeat a year because you can handle it. You do poorly previously. That's why you repeat. But that's not what Americans. That's not what it is in the American world. In the American school world, because the courses are all modular, these are all ability based. You can go in as a grade 9 student, but you're taking grade 10 math and grade 11 physics. It's okay. They don't mind. It's fine. Right. On the other hand, you can go in as a grade 11 student and taking grade 10 math or English as well. It's okay. It's ability based. And so therefore, repeating a year is okay if the family consider as giving the child an additional year of exposure, transiting to boarding as well. So we can talk about the exact situation for your family later on. The application elements over here, I just want to share on the left-hand side, which is the assessment pyramid. American schools, they look at students in terms of academics, extracurricular, social, and personal. And on the left-hand side is the top 100 schools, top 50 schools, top 30 schools, top 10 schools, that sort of thing. So if all you have is academics, yeah, you can easily get into a top 100 American boarding schools. But the top 50 schools require you to have top academics and top extracurricular. And the top 30 schools require you to have top academics, top extracurricular, and top social as well. And then the top 10 boarding schools require you have a very strong personal element as well. So these are the ways that they assess the student body in terms of the application materials. You have to submit your school grades. You have to do some standardized tests. You have to have a portfolio of your activities to demonstrate. You have to get recommendations from your teacher, counselor, and your parents. And most importantly, they have to learn to advocate for themselves through personal statements and interviews. Interviews are the most decisive factor in deciding whether a child is admitted or not. So remember, I just said interviews are the most decisive factor, not the test, not the report card. So as long as the test scores and report cards are not like an outlier, right? It's really low. Otherwise, as long as they're okay, it's really the interviews that is going to make the child shine. And so this will open up the door for many students, because many students right now, their maturity might not kick in. They may not be getting all A pluses yet, but doesn't mean they do not have the potential. It's just that right now, study is not, what they are most concerned with, or it's not something that they would die to do every night, stay up all night to do studying, right? It's okay, right? Doesn't mean that they do not have the potential, right? So it's the interviews that would get them in. How to apply? Well, it's a long list. You can do all that yourself, DIY, or you can use a consultant. And our services is end-to-end project management, and from key positioning, school selection, interview training, coaching, all the way to school advocacy, admin support, advisory. So, but this is not the reason why we are here today. What we are here today is to share enough about boarding education, and especially American boarding education, to drum up interest to meet the American boarding schools when they come to Dubai. This is the reason. Whether or not you get interested in boarding education, American boarding education or not, if you are curious to find out what this American boarding schools are all about, please come and register for the fair. It's free of charge. Everybody welcome. All community members welcome. Just come and bring your family, bring your child, and bring your friends. Every family, you must have friends who might be in a similar situation, thinking about similar topics. And maybe you might also have friends at a different age group, which you believe might fit more into applying to American boarding schools this year. You want to bring them in now, please help spread the word. That's it. These are our open resources. Feel free to join us on Instagram, on Facebook, YouTube, with our WhatsApp hotlines, with a special Middle East hotline, WhatsApp hotline. Please feel free to come to speak to us.